Alright, so we got a orthopedic surgeon who went ahead and talked about Joe Burrow's current injury. Obviously, he's recovering from it, but at this point, this is the most important part of his recovery. Is now learning to throw the ball again, throwing the ball efficiently, and being able to actually, feel comfortable day in, day out, and not have pain, not have any setbacks, not have any problems. Here's what There's no way in heck I'm going to say this last name. A board-certified orthopedic surgeon said he's going to definitely need to listen to his body a bit. Part of it is dealing with the on and off inflammation after the surgery for quite some time. I would probably expect him to have on and off problems from a soreness standpoint for about a year. So even until November, I know when he had his initial injury and surgery, I anticipate him on and off having some issues. And then the rest of it here, part of it isn't physical mechanics of the wrist, separating or the ligament sailing or repair failing. It's from inflammation that can get stirred up as a result of just recovering from the injury. And sometimes that doesn't happen immediately when you're playing. Sometimes it's the aftermath. For example, if he has a short week and he's practicing, he gets what's called, now I'm going to try to butcher that name, which is just inflammation of the wrist. Thank you. That's something he'll think about every time he throws the ball. Listen to his body is going to be important, but obviously he's got the best medical care possible. So if he does end up with some increased inflammation, there are certain things that can be done. Medications, various type of injections, things that can kind of work along to keep his wrist feeling well. From a physical standpoint, though, I don't anticipate at this point, without him taking contact, that he's going to be as big of an issue. That's not going to be as big of an issue. But if you constantly have inflammation in your wrist, I don't know why I can't read tonight, particularly with this injury, you can get a little stiffness, soreness, apprehension with use, and then you have trouble feeling confident with what you're doing. In the perfect world, Burrow would never touch a field until the actual season. Blase. A little bit more down the list here, he says that's why his contact is going to be limited. That's why it's a gradual return to throw. And the good thing for him is that throwing is a little less force on the wrist. It's going to be a body weight fall contact. That's going to be the first test. So once he gets sacked, pretty much. The throwing the ball is not going to be the problem. It's once he gets sacked and he slams the wrist on the ground on someone else's body or hits a helmet, that's when the real problem is going to happen. Throwing is not a high stress on the wrist, but body weight contact on the wrist, the first joint that gets stressed in the wrist, ultimately the wrist kind of bears the brunt of a fall. And the question is, how is the body going to respond to the first few hits, the first few preseason games? Well, don't worry, we have Zach Taylor. He won't play any preseason games. Or scrimmages that have with other teams in the preseason. How is he going to respond to that? Okay. Continues down the list here saying the reason why not a lot of other players or quarterbacks have experienced this injury is because it's a much higher energy type injury. Linemen, obviously, the body weight, another lineman fall on them, you experience a lot more force versus his own body weight or just another person coming down on his wrist. That's why it's a little bit more rare of an injury in general. This is a little bit more rare of an injury than, let's say, a fracture or other ligament injuries in the wrist. So that's why he hasn't encountered any other quarterback with this. The big long-term problem with this certain injury is the result of the repair are not as consistent with the results of the repair in... Wait, hold up, what? The big long-term problem with this certain injury is the results of the repair are not as consistent with the results of repairs in, let's say, other joints. Okay, if we're talking about, let's say, his knee, he had an ACL tear. The results are pretty consistent, especially in a quarterback with an ACL repair. Can still function at pretty much the same level as they did before the ACL. That's because the results of reconstruction of ACL are very consistent. They're successful. It's a good surgery. The ligament is a very small structure. This word right here. Yeah. So when you're talking about repairing small structures or even reconstructing small structures, it just makes it a little bit more challenging because it's a lot harder to repair those smaller structures. You're putting stitches in something that's a lot smaller. It has to heal down to smaller spaces. You don't have this broad healing footprint. That means the result of the surgery are a little bit mixed. So this seems like what we thought is a very rare injury that isn't really, there isn't like blueprints of everyone having this problem, right? And when people do have this problem, they're not using their wrists as much. The results of the reconstruction are a lot worse than the results of the repair and on the front end. Okay. The good thing about this overall is that a lot of wrist injuries can be temporalized or managed without necessarily affecting him long term, because so much of the power in the throw comes from the other joints of the body. So I do think he'll probably be able to manage long term any sort of issues that arise in the future. So what I'm getting from all this is that throwing the ball is not going to do anything to hurt him or stop him from being successful. He could throw the ball all day, every day. What's really it's going to come down to is the first contact. The first time he gets sacked. The first time he gets tackled. When he lands on his wrist. When a player lands on his wrist. That's going to be when we first find out the problem or issue. And also, after every game, he's going to have inflammation in his wrist. So his wrist is going to be swelling up, it's going to be hurting, and as the doctor said here, all he has to do is take medication or injections, and that should fix the problem. Which, going to be interesting, but that means probably next season, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, all the way up to week 18, all the way to the Super Bowl, he's going to have to be getting injected with stuff every single week to avoid the problem with the wrist swelling up and inflammation. So, it's a process, man. It's a process. But you know what? We'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.